Okay, so the following video will go over Wroth Flames, Hallowed Wing II, or I'm sorry, let's see, Wroth Flames, Akh Afah II, and Hallowed Wing II of P6 of DSR. I'm going to pause the video at different points to make a comment and move on to the next part of the sequence that is in front of us. Very, very briefly, just to recap from previous video, the main points to P6 go for DSR is during P5 when Thornton returns after the meteor sequence. I was stressing that we have to see the tank buster, and ideally see the entirety of the buster in order to make sure our 2 minutes align with our pot window at the start of P6. The risk of pushing P5 early is our 2-minute window will misalign to our pot window. Our 2-minute window will come back in all likelihood during cauterize when the dragons jump away, and we're needing to resolve stillness effectively in order for half the party to not die to the debuffs that they absorb during Worm's Breath 2. So make sure you see the buster in P5. The other note that I wanted to make, and let me see if I can, this is probably a good POV. I wanted to make is remember that the way the markers are set up are such that the red markers split the map in half for the times that a dragon, let's just say Nidhogg, is preparing cauterize and will dive down the side of the map that they're on. So in all in all like in all cases of like Hallowed Wing 1 and 2, pretending Nidhogg is cleaving through Hraesvelgr, you need to make sure that you're going to bias away from the center point of the red marker in order to avoid getting run over by Nidhogg during Hallowed Wing 1. And then the blue markers are set up such that they will cut the map in half during the times that Hraesvelgr will cast Hallowed Wing. So if the wing from our POV looking at Hraesvelgr, if the wing on our right is glowing, that means he's going to cleave the entire right side of the map. So you can use the blue markers to help orient you and make sure that you're going to be nice and safe. As long as you're not past that midpoint, um, you'll be able to safely dodge the Hollow Wing. So with that out of the way, I'm going to let this VOD play out for P6, and then just very, very briefly narrate what's going on. We go into our 2-minute and pot. Non-tanks are positioning for Worm's Breath 1 at the south side. The tanks are positioning accordingly depending on what the dragon's mouths are doing. The DPS are spreading away for Vow Pass to assign, and then the groups are starting to converge on the respective areas to prepare for Akh Afah. I made notes in the previous video for shield healers that are very important in order to not miss the timing on mitigations, and thus in turn to avoid getting people killed to damage, especially the person holding the vow. And then as soon as we resolve Akh Afah, we go into Hallowed Wing. Keep an eye on where Nidhogg jumps, because that'll determine the cleave of Cauterize as well as what Hraesvelgr is doing. He's currently telegraphing party close, tanks far. The tanks are needing to go away in order to bait 2 plumes, as well as the party making sure that they're respecting the rule that I described as far as the markers in order to avoid getting run over by the Cauterize and in order to avoid getting clipped by the Hallowed Wing. And then as soon as we're done with Hallowed Wing 1, we facilitate a Vow Pass from the person holding the Vow Pass to Tank 1, and we enter Wroth Flames. So it's at this point that we're attacking Hraesvelgr. Wroth Flames is casting. When Wroth Flames finishes casting, the party will be assigned one of 2 debuffs or no debuffs. And it's very simple. In this day of age, unfortunately, PF does like using auto marker. It's a very effective tool. I personally don't like it, but it helps PF be very consistent with Wroth Flames. Effectively, the way you break down Wroth Flames is very simple. If you have a purple debuff, as we can see here, and I'll zoom in. Unfortunately, with this POV, the duty recorder glitched, obviously. That's why you don't see the Dark Knight in the party list. They are here. But the way you read off flames is if you have a red purple debuff, that just means you're going to bias towards Nidhogg on the tail end of Wroth Flames, and you're gonna need to do a spread to avoid overlapping with anyone else, because you're gonna when your purple red debuff expires, you're gonna give off a small AoE. So it's very simple, just spread if you're purple. If you are assigned white, each of these people with the white marker are gonna bias towards Hraesvelgr's side on Charlie, and each person with this marker has to stack with a person who has no debuff. So for example, the Reaper here has no debuff. So this Reaper is gonna have to stack with one of these two people. With the auto marker that people like to use, the stacks are you typically assign the stop sign, the do not attack symbol, and then the chain symbol for the stack pairs. So, once again, if you have no debuff, your responsibility as no debuff is to make sure you bias towards Hraesvelgr's side and end up with your stack buddy. In the absence of AM, again, it's a very simple read. Red, purple, Nidhogg, make sure you spread. White debuffs, make sure you're not on top of each other. And no debuffs, make sure you get on top of a person with a white debuff. It's as simple as that. Now, the only other tricky element in all this is, as you can see here, looking at the Gunbreaker, what's going to happen in the future is they're going to resolve the debuff for Wroth Flames first, and less than 4 seconds later, Tank 1 has to facilitate a Vow pass to Tank 2. So there are circumstances where the tanks can end up on the opposite sides of the map. You have to make good use of your gap closer to facilitate the pass in the middle, and to make it to each other in time, because sometimes, unfortunately, again, there are instances where the tanks are very far away from one another, and even with sprint, there's a high risk of them not being able to facilitate the pass in time. With that said, I said quite a bit, so we're gonna watch this play out. Nidhogg is casting Wroth Flames after we just got out of Hallowed Wing 1 into the first Vow pass. Hraesvelgr is gonna jump away, so for the time being, we are hitting Hraesvelgr. We're just waiting for this Wroth Flames to cast. Unfortunately, in this party, we used AM for assignment, so you're gonna see a bunch of markers pop up, and I'll describe how to read the markers very, very briefly. So as you can see here, people are getting assigned chains. People are being assigned do not attack symbols, and then people are being assigned numbers. The numbers that appear on people's heads, if the party decides to use AM, will bias towards Nidhogg's side, so they'll bias towards 3. The party with do not attack and chains are going to bias on the opposite side towards Hraesvelgr's side. And then the chains are just going to get on top of each other. The do not attacks get on top of each other. Typically, we have chains at the wall. So the chains are going to have to make sure that they end up at the wall, Hraesvelgr's side, to give it enough room for the do not attacks to kind of like gravitate towards here and resolve their respective stacks. That's how you read the markers. So Wroth Flames happens, Hraesvelgr jumps away. Hraesvelgr is going to spawn at the outskirt of the map, and he has one of 3 positions. that he can pick. So we're gonna beat up on the wide POV. So here's the situation. Nidhogg is right here, and he's preparing Akh Morn. So Nidhogg's here. Hraesvelgr, when he jumps away and prepares a dive bomb, he can appear on either side of the map. He can appear on this side of the map or off screen on the opposite side of the map. So you do have to flip your camera and kind of get your bearings on where this boy is gonna die from. Now, there are three possibilities of Hraesvelgr's Cauterize. He can either dive opposite, far away from Nidhogg, in which case that means the party, here can just bias towards Nidhogg and get uptime on Nidhogg, because if you remember, the hitbox is very big. Now, the other scenario is Hraesvelgr can dive down the middle, in which case the party can still go and get uptime. They just need to hug the wall and bias towards Nidhogg to get plenty of uptime. The really messed up configuration is when Hraesvelgr is gonna dive through Nidhogg, in which case the group has to go away. They have to fuck off, and then they'll end up in one of two paths. They'll either end up towards Bravo side or Delta side. Not super important, but this configuration has forced downtime. So once again, really important during Akh Afah. It is a little nerve-wracking seeing the health bounce around, but you cannot afford to not do damage for Akh Afah, because you need to anticipate the configuration that we're seeing right now, where Hraesvelgr is diving through Nidhogg, and it's forced downtime for the melee and the tanks. Another note for forced downtime is do read the Akh Morn cast, because as the Akh Morn cast is finishing, the sequence starts playing out. So the Akh Morn cast is happening, you're hitting Nidhogg, and then if it's forced downtime for the melees and the tanks, make sure you mitigate Nidhogg. Make sure you throw out the feint and reprisal, just as you're making your way to position to bait the Akh Morns, because you're not gonna have a chance if it's forced downtime, if you fail to mitigate Nidhogg, and then you're here, you're not going to be in range of doing your reprisal or feint in time until like we're already basically finished with baiting the Akh Morn puddles. So it's just something to bear in mind. Going back to the start of Wroth Flames sequence. So what I do is I scan the map very quickly, and we'll use this pool as an example. Wroth Flames is casting, Hraesvelgr jumps away. I immediately scan to figure out where is Hraesvelgr, and I see, okay, Hraesvelgr is gonna cleave the opposite side, so it's uptime on Nidhogg. We get our markers, and now we're just figuring out the starting position to bait the Akh Morn puddles, and it's very simple. There's gonna be a set of orbs that spawn in the middle. They're not important. I'm just looking for the second set to spawn, and I hear the second set spawned to the southeast. So looking at this once again, it's not complicated. First set spawned here, second set spawned here. So our party being here is just gonna position over here for the starting position on Akh Morn. And then there's gonna be a third set of orbs that spawn here. It doesn't really matter. What you only care about is figuring out, okay, where's that second set of orbs spawning, and then you just position opposite. So that's what you're gonna see in this VOD right now. So returning to the VOD. I hear that the orbs on Delta side spawn, so we're moving opposite to Delta towards 4. What we're gonna do is we're gonna clump up nice and tight together. And the orbs that just spawn on top of us is the third set of orbs, so we're gonna be fine. We're effectively doing a 3-to-1 dodge. The party is throwing out mitigation, so, you know, yet again, I do have to stress study your mitigations, because if people start missing tools, you will very likely come close to dying. This is super important. I cannot understate this. We get on top of each other. As soon as the Akh Morn cast finishes, Hraesvelgr is gonna dive, and we start baiting puddles. We're gonna bait 1, 2, 3, 4 puddles. Very, very important. And then the third set of orbs go off, and then we resolve our markers. So as you can see, chains at the wall, Hraesvelgr side. Going to highlight chains at the wall, Hraesvelgr side. Do not attacks are, you know, far away enough from chains than this person here with the number 4 spread marker. And then the spreads are kind of just like fanning out, making sure they're not overlapping, so that when the debuffs expire, you know, the AoEs from the spreads don't clip, the stacks don't clip each other, and we're good to go. That's basically Wroth Flames. Now going back to us moving into position, and then yet again, you know, this is around the time that we're doing our mitigations to prepare. Well, in the absence of a scholar, I do recommend you pop sprint. We don't do a full stutter step, but we do have to make sure um we don't run into the first set of orbs that are exploding in front of us. It's just a case of you're just gonna have to get a feel for the movement, because what some people report with high latency, you'll see them if you watch a person with high latency. Like, we have a very, very helpful person named Taya. They're in Brazil, so because they have high latency, from their POV, what you typically see is they're just gunning it. They have sprint up and they're just running all the way in, and they even run into the first set of orbs. Reason being is because with Hea's high latency, um, by the time the server registers Hea's movement, um, Hea's going to be safe. Whereas with my POV, my latency to the server is very low, so I do have to be a little careful with my movement, to make sure I stutter step ever so slightly with sprint up, to avoid running into this first set of orbs that are exploding in the down the center. The other thing you need to be very mindful of is if you linger in this puddle for too long, you're gonna pick up a dot and you're gonna die. You are guaranteed to die if you pick up the dot from the from the puddle bait. The last thing about the puddle bait that you need to know is, as we can see here, you know, we see the kind of like rough approximation of the stack. It is a tight stack, but the puddle it leaves behind is actually bigger. So do not, you know, convince yourself that because this puddle it leaves behind is bigger that you can be ahead of the group, because if you're ahead of the group, you're gonna leave people, you know, it's gonna be a smaller stack that resolves, and that's usually enough to start doing severe enough damage that it starts stressing the healers and people will start dying to damage. So nice and tight as the little stack. You do have to be tight in your movement and then slightly stutter stepping if it's necessary to avoid running into the first set of orbs, and then, you know, safely getting out of the puddle so you don't pick up a bleed. It sucks for people with high latency, but um you this is a part of the fight where you do have to get a feel for how the puddles are baiting and how the dots are calculating their snapshot. But, you know, once again, we're nice and tight. Mitigations are out. Stack 1, puddle bait. Stack 2, puddle bait. Move into first set. Stack 3, puddle bait. Stack 4, puddle bait. And then it's at this point, immediately after the fourth, or after the fourth bait is planted and the puddle's out, you need to look at the party list. I'm sorry, you need to look at the enmity list so that you can see what Nidhogg's doing. Nidhogg is casting Hot Wing, which is just an in. If you've done Nidhogg EX, then you probably should. And then so the call would typically be, you know, Hot Wing in, chains at the wall. Chains at the wall just to remind the chain people to end up at the wall on Hraesvelgr's side. Hot Wing in, meaning, we just gotta make sure we're in enough to avoid getting cleaved by Hot Wing. Hraesvelgr can also cast Hot Tail, in which case you will have to go out. And the general positioning for Hot Tail is you bias away from the direction that the orbs were baited. So we were positioned. Let's see. We were positioned such that Nidhogg is here. Hraesvelgr so it's gonna end up over here. And then the party stack was here. Party stack was doing this kind of movement. And so there are large puddles here on north side. So what you're gonna have to do is let's pretend it's hot tail out. So the group is gonna bias south side because we were baiting puddles from north side. Now, if we were in a scenario of, let's say, downtime, forced downtime, and we were over here on the southeast side, we would have to bait our puddles such that we would end up in this sort of like direction, just drawing the puddles. And so by the time we end up here, we would bias our mechanics, our spread and stack mechanics north side, biasing away from these puddles, such that if it was hot tail out, then the spreads would end up here north side, and then the stacks would end up north side towards Hraesvelgr. So you do have to do some camera work and have enough situational awareness to remember how you're going to position your body while you're in motion, and then also maintaining uptime. This is what really makes Wroth Flames the choke point for a lot of people. Is it is difficult at times to remember, you're needing to move, you need to hit the boss, you need to be doing damage, and also positioning accordingly so that you resolve your threat or stack. But with that said, taking it from the top over here, this example was uptime because Hraesvelgr, once again was diving away from Nidhogg. We're getting in position, so we're doing uptime, party on 4 because we got our second set of ores spawning on Delta, on the Delta southeast. Get on top of each other, bait orbs. We have a scholar, so we do have expedience up, but otherwise just pop sprint so that you can safely get out of those puddles, but make sure you don't run into the first set of orbs. Bait puddles. And right here, it's going to be hot wing in, chains at the wall. Spreads are biasing Nidhogg's side. And you notice here, after we finish the puddles, the camera work that I do to get my bearings after doing all that motion is I immediately flip my camera to true north. That way, I orient myself and I get my grounding yet again. And now I'm moving in position here for my respective spreads while the stacks on the opposite side on Nidhogg's side, I'm sorry, Hraesvelgr's side are resolving. And remember, as soon as the mechanics for Wroth Flames resolve for the spreads and stack, the tank to tank Vow pass doesn't have a lot of time to resolve. We have less than 3 seconds to resolve this before we fail the pass. If we fail the pass, it's a wipe. So resolve, and then the tanks get on top of each other. So keep your eyes on the Gunbreaker here. The Gunbreaker is labeled 3. And then the Dark Knight, we got lucky. We had a scenario where both tanks were labeled spreads, and they were already next to each other. So keep your eyes on these folks. Spreads resolve, and immediately, like without hesitation, the tanks are getting on top of each other to facilitate the second Vow pass. So Vow pass is successful. We're going into Akh Afah II. Akh Afah II is the same as Akh Afah 1. I've already gone over Akh Afah 1 in the previous video, so I'm not gonna go over this. But to remember to mit and to remember to make sure everyone is topped off and healthy in preparation for the next sequence. Akh Afah is going off, and now we start looking at Hraesvelgr. Hraesvelgr is gonna do another telegraph for near or far and cast a Hallowed Wing. At the same time, Nidhogg will start casting Hot Tail or a Hot Wing. So it's gonna be another in or out. So keep your eyes on Hraesvelgr. What is Hraesvelgr doing? Hraesvelgr is telegraphing party close, tanks far. So party at the wall, tanks far. So that's the first step. The second step is seeing, okay, which direction is Hraesvelgr going to cleave? So the wing from our POV on the right side is going to cleave the south side of the map. So we need to make sure, you know, regardless of what Nidhogg's doing, we need to make sure we're going to be on this side of the blue marker. If we're over here on the south side of the blue marker, we're dead. You have to make sure you read this blue marker to safely tell you where the approximate cleave range is for Hallowed Wing. So that's step 2. And step 3, Nidhogg starts casting something. Nidhogg is casting Hot Wing. So what that also means it's going to be an in. So this is going to actually be very cramped, and that's a very good example. So here's the scenario. This side of the map is going to get cleaved by Hallowed Wing. This entire half. Now, with Nidhogg casting Hot Wing, we have to be in as well. So we have about yay leeway. Let me see if I can draw this properly. We have about yay leeway to avoid getting cleaved by the Hot Wing. So we have a very narrow strip to work with. It's this strip to make sure that the party ends up at the wall on Hraesvelgr's side, because Hraesvelgr head is craned up and the tanks are far away to bait the plumes, making sure that the tanks are not on top of each other or overlapping enough that their plumes are going to kill themselves or kill the party. So we're moving into position. It is party at the wall, tanks far, Hot Wing in, and you'll see it right now. Hallowed Wing is going to go off first, and then immediately after, there you go. There's the telegraph for Hot Wing. So once again, this entire half right here is unsafe. It's going to get cleaved. So the chunk that I am not highlighting is the space that we have to work with. It's pretty narrow. You have to be very careful. A note for the healers is your tanks are usually running dry on mitigations, because the tanks are needing to hold mitigations in preparation for Worm's Breath 2 going into Cauterized. So it's good practice as a healer to throw something on the tank, especially on the Vow pass tank, to make sure they're healthy. From my POV, you can see I'm trying to target the Vow pass. I'm sorry, the Vow tank. My shield healer gave them an X-Cog because the tanks are running empty on this end. They need to hold their resources for the last 2 set of mechanics that we're going to see later in the fight. So it's Hot Wing in, tanks far, and as you can see here, I was gambling because I was very close to the cleave of the plume, because I was trying to heal the Dark Knight on the opposite side of the map. Very, very big. But playing this sequence from the top and then just describing is once we resolve Akh Afah II after getting out of Wroth Flames, start looking at Hraesvelgr. What I would actually recommend people do is, as soon as Akh Afah II resolve, start blowing up Hraesvelgr. The incentive of killing Hraesvelgr is, in case the tank who's going to take the dive from Hraesvelgr fucks up their mitigation, you can still save the run by making sure Hraesvelgr instantly dies on transition into touchdown. I've seen some very messy recoveries, but if the Hraesvelgr tank messes up mitigation and they're guaranteed to die, then the surviving tank will tank LB so that the touchdown is non-lethal as long as we're full health. Hraesvelgr instantly dies, and then we're still okay. We can kill Nidhogg. So generally, Akh Afah II, start blowing up Hraesvelgr, kill him. The added benefit of killing Hraesvelgr, or any dragon for that matter, is the moment we enter touchdown sequence near the end of P6 going into Enrage, when a dragon dies, the dot that the tanks pick up falls off because the dot is annoying. It is easy to forget to heal the tank, and the tank drops dead of damage from the dot after touchdown because the tanks get really low with cauterized. So we're keeping an eye on, we just did Akh Afah II, we're keeping an eye on Hraesvelgr. It's going to be party close at the wall, hot wing in, tanks far, party close, tanks far, party close, hot wing in. You have to use your eyes. We don't do a call for Hallowed Wing. You just have to know to look at Hraesvelgr. And then we're going to facilitate a Vow pass between tank 2 and melee 2, I believe, or melee 1. We have a little dance going on here. There's 3 people in this stack that do not need to be here. And then here we go. That'll be the end of this video. For the final video, I'll go into Worm's Breath 2, cauterized touchdown, and then the P7 transition. The only remaining notes I really have are going into Wroth Flames. Once again, you are gonna have to get a feel for these puddles going out, because unfortunately, if you have high latency, you're probably just gonna hold W and hope and pray that the server registers your position well enough that the server doesn't say, "Oh, you were in the puddle too long. You're getting a dot now." Or in the case of low latency, you have to be really good about being ahead of the puddle, but also not, running away from the party stack, and obviously not running into the first set of orbs that are exploding down the middle. It is very much you kind of feel it out type of deal. There's no mechanical rule. You're just gonna have to get a feel for this. And I do have to stress the mitigations. We're very nice and healthy because the healers and the party knows what they're doing as far as mitigations and healing schedule. But it's very easy to die to damage here. And then once again, as soon as we resolve Akh Afah II, I said that I highly recommend you just kill Hraesvelgr. It simplifies the enrage sequence in case anything goes wrong from Worm's Breath. Going into Cauterize after Worm's Breath 2 into Touchdown, just the last sequence. And then that's all there is to it. A lot of this is just rehash of the first set of mechanics that the dragons show us at the start of P6, and it's not too terrible. I guess the last thing that I'll do before closing out this video is show the wide POV of Wroth Flames playing out so we can see our positioning. I'm just skipping on ahead. This is just demoing the first part of the fight that we're not interested in for now. We're resolving Akh Afah here, and then Hallowed Wing here. Hallowed Wing 1 is resolved. Vow Pass is resolved. Okay, and we're going into Wroth Flame. So looking at the wide POV, Hraesvelgr jumps away and he appears. And then, there we go. Looking at this POV, yet again, Hraesvelgr can appear on either middle away or in front of Nidhogg. You just have to be vigilant. Okay, cool. Second orb spawn. So we move opposite to the second orbs that are spawning or mitigating. And then we start resolving the bait. As you can see here from my POV, you see me casting a Medica 2 just to prepare. I throw out Temperance as White Mage and I throw out Lilybell. And then here we go. It is a lot of damage, but with the proper tools and planning, you see that we get topped off almost immediately. And then I'm just spinning the camera because, again, what I like to do after getting out of the fourth puddle bait is I flip my camera to true north just to remind myself where Hraesvelgr and Nidhogg is. You often see people get turned around because they're in motion and they lose their bearings. And sometimes you see the stacks end up on Nidhogg's side and it's too late. Like, we're already gonna die. And then we move into position for Wroth Flames. We're just waiting for the debuffs to fall off. See, cool. And we facilitate the tank Vow pass. We go into Akh Afah II. That's no different than Akh Afah 1. Keep your eyes on Hraesvelgr, party closed at the wall, hot wing in, tanks far, party closed, tanks far, party at the wall. Okay, cool. And there we go. And then that's it for this sequence. Once again, for final sequence, we're going to go into Worm's Breath 2, into Cauterized, into Touchdown, in Rate sequence, and finally P7 transition.